Stand outside the door.
My daughter talked to me and we went out and
Stand outside the door.
there's nothing we can do except enjoy them at this point. What are you gonna do?
Oh, you called an emergency.
I'd like to call to order the Schenectady City Council Committee meeting for Tuesday, July 5th, 2022. First committee is Finance. Mr. Mudabaran.
Thank you. Call to order Finance Committee. First item is discussion, city towing service request for proposal. No, I'm sitting there.
You're not Chief Steve.
Yeah, you're not.
He got nervous with the taste.
Oh, please, yes.
So a couple of things. First one, I believe you guys all received the city towing proposal. We have been out of contract for about 2 years now, so we met with the finance and law department to put together this RFP that we want to put out. There's a few changes in here that the city was looking for, be able to tow larger vehicles, be able to store larger vehicles. Right now, we don't have a spot for those. We're looking to have as many tow agencies that are willing to put in proposals, so we have some options and choices. They put a point system in place for how they would be graded as far as what their services are available for. And I guess you guys have any questions on that?
Open up for questions. So, are you looking for us to move something here? Because I see it as discussion.
No, not at all. This is just if you guys have any questions. We want to put this out. We just wanted to show you guys and see if you guys have any questions or any.
Go ahead, please.
This doesn't have to be approved by the council because we're not paying any of the tow companies. This is more of an FYI we want to bring to the council's attention because as Assistant Chief Whipple said, there are certain fees that we're going to start requiring or charged, particularly those larger vehicles that have been an issue, boats, RVs, things along those lines that it's very difficult to store.
Okay.
Also, we didn't have anything in our contract specifically related to the off-road vehicles, the dirt bikes and the four-wheelers. So we're looking at obviously incorporating that, which obviously leads to that second piece, which is on the agenda.
Any other questions come in? Thank you. The next item is called for public hearing, amending the code of the City of Schenectady, section 248-101C regarding redeeming of off-road vehicle.
Okay, so right now, it was passed, I think it was last year. Right now, it's set by code that it's $70 for a tow fee and $20 a day for storage fees. And we want to open up the public hearing so that that can be changed by resolution. If you guys decide that you want to change the fees anytime, in our current contract, we run into is the regular tow fee I think is $165, and then when this was passed, the tow companies didn't want to tow for the $70, so that came back to the city as far as we had to make up the difference between the two. So
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, the issue with this, the council set the fee amount for the tow. However, the tow companies need to use the same type of vehicles that they have to tow, dirt bikes, ATVs. And the problem with that is it's still the same cost to them. In fact, they've said that, because they have to make sure it doesn't fall over, particularly a dirt bike, it may actually take additional work to make sure that it's secure, which is why they're charging the higher fee. So it's strictly to change, as AC Whipple said, the fee structure to remove the set amount and instead modify the code to say to be set by resolution, so that in the future the council wouldn't have to have a new call for a public hearing to change the code. Instead, you would just pass a resolution.
Any other questions, comments? So may I have a motion on this item?
I'll move it. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Motion to adjourn?
I'll move it. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
So I'd like to call to order the Public Safety Committee. We have 2 items on our agenda tonight. The first is the Civilian Police Review Board appointment, and that'll be discussed by Mayor Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you know, that civilian police review board is made up of individuals recommended by different entities within the community. And the chamber has recommended Doreen Palmatier. So I've forwarded that name for your consideration.
Any questions or comments?
I'll move this.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
The second item on the agenda tonight is discussion installing speed humps, and that will be discussed by Council President Porterfield and Mr. Long.
Mr. Wallen? As you know, the last committee meeting, we talked about this, and Mr. Wallen said he'd done some research, and he'd come back with some information for us, so that's what we're going to be hearing today, and the feasibility of doing it.
Sure. So we had an internal meeting last week after we discussed it with myself, AC Whipple, John Cluccio, regarding what we talked about here about speed bumps in the city of Schenectady. We looked at some locations kind of based upon criteria that we talked about here, priority streets, non-priority streets, parallel roads, where we think we may have issues based off of some of the police data. And what we'd like to do is, we don't have anything formal yet. One of the reasons is that we have been trying to also loop in the fire department. We just got some of their comments back today, as we want to make sure that this isn't an impediment to fire trucks. As talking with the vendors, they have said that that has come up in the past. So he is okay with these particular locations. What we're looking at is 2 test locations. The first being Duane Avenue between Craig Street and Brandywine, and the second Rugby Road between Wendell and McClellan. These locations are both feature school zones. They're both non-priority roads. And specifically with Duane Avenue, it was on a PD list of areas that they have had speeding issues. So with those 2 areas, what we look to do is purchase 3 temporary units, which would be within the budget. The units that we kind of spoke about before, they're large rubber mat units. We are working on it. They are through a purchasing operative that we have, Sourcewell Contracting. And we have, just as recently as last week, AC Whipple has contacted them about availability and lead time. So we're looking at trying to put some measures together where we're going to record the speeds in the area, Duane Avenue, for a period of no less than 2 weeks, using some incognito things that aren't going to draw attention themselves. Possibly either being, we have new speed recording devices being purchased through a grant by PD, or I've been working with John Cluccio on some of the optical sensors that we have in the city can also do speed detection. So we've already pulled some of that data to see how that would work. Then once we have those in, maybe we just do Duane this year, because we'd like to put the installations out for a minimum of 8 weeks, couple of months, because it does take some effort to put it in. When you take them out, you have to do some road repair because they get driven into the ground with essentially spikes. So they will, they will mark up the asphalt because they can't be shifting around as they're there. Once we have these 2 locations, we kind of come back to you with some data. But for a permanent, during that time, I think we'd like to internally work both with ourselves and with the council on what the long-term program is. Is this like, are we going to model the city of Rochester where they use a petition, or are we going to have it be, the council is going to decree where they want to put these? I mean, we would still, under some guidance, we would still advise that we don't have them on priority roads in certain areas. But when you start using the guidelines of no parallel roads and no priority streets, the streets get really whittled down very quickly to only a select few. We did talk about, is this a program that we try to use only maybe in school zones? Or these 2 are both in school zones, do we want to focus on areas that have school zones in them? Or is that, the school zone, technically, you're supposed to be driving 15 during there anyways. So the other thing that John did do is he reached out to the city of Albany. The city of Albany did hire Creighton Manning, put together a memorandum. In the memorandum, we talked about speed humps specifically, and they did invest almost approximately $500,000 in installing permanent speed bumps on 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Avenues in the Arbor Hill neighborhood. So we have some details on that. The memo, we just got approval that we, to share it if we wanted to share it. So next time, if I put together a whole package, I'll include that memo, because I didn't want to share it without just being said that we could, because I didn't want to put them on the spot. But, that is the next level. These speed bumps that Albany put in are milled, paved, painted, permanent signage, $500,000. So they had a issue that they dealt with through an engineering solution. I don't think we're there yet, but it's not to say that we couldn't be. I don't think we have an issue that's, at least not to my knowledge, or AC Whipple's, that has brought to itself to that level where we're looking to put something measure like that in place. So that's where we are right now. Fire chief just said that we are okay to put them at these locations. So we are going to work with the vendor and our purchasing department on getting some orders in. In the meantime, they are looking at getting the detections for the speed cameras, and then, you know, prepping and getting OGS and everything. But these are only 2 locations. I mean, they could change if you think that, you know, they were kind of looked at just from our perspective. We could move them around afterwards, but right now that's where we're headed.
Will there be signs to let people know that
Oh,
they're
yes,
there? Okay.
yes. That's John. We have a sign department, so John is going to be making signs. We're gonna have signs that say, bump ahead and then bump. So for each pair, there would be 6 signs, there'll be 12 new signs in general. So 6 one way, 6 the other for the 3 of them, so.
I have one more question. How many would be, you said, so a length of like, from, you said on
We're looking
Dwayne from Craig to?
Craig to Brandywine essentially.
So how many would be on that stretch?
3.
3.
And we're looking to space them. There is a stop sign there.
Yes.
So we are looking to space them so that, the stop sign is acting as its own as a speed determining device. There is a school zone there, so you should be slowing down. But, we are kind of looking just to use this as a record. We're gonna have a couple of detection units to see where we are. There is always the fear of people, you go over it and you speed up. So that's why on the longer stretch on Dwayne, we want to have 2, because we really don't want people being like, well, I have to make up time, which is always a concern with these type of devices. And also, we would pull them up prior to plow. We won't have them down for the plow season. But if we go permanent, like Albany and the town of Colony, they use indicator posts on either side, so the plows know to lift their blades and go over.
Thank you.
Yes, I just have a couple of questions. Thanks, Chris. If someone doesn't lower their speed and goes over the bump and causes damage to their vehicle, is there a chance that that would have any liability for the city? That was brought up to me in.
I'm not 100% on that.
residents.
I'll have to look into it with Andrew and AC Whipple about what the liabilities if we have someone that just
Keeps going.
keeps going. and it's-
Doesn't mind the signs, doesn't mind the speed limit,
Yeah.
goes over the speed bump, does damage to the.
Yeah, I'd have to imagine this is something that is played out 100 times. We're not going to be the first city to put speed bumps clearly. So we'll try to get something in place to find out what it is.
Okay, thanks. And then in terms of removing them, as you mentioned, especially, these are going to be temporary and trying to pilot and get some data and some results. Can you also tell us what the cost will be if we decide not to put them back, or, in terms of removing them, if you're putting them into the ground, if you're having to do repair to the street?
What I'm hoping is if we get a clean install, I'm hoping that we have a hot in place epoxy truck. It's the patcher that you see where, if you look in our roads, we have a really kind of a slick looking pothole that looks like a different than an asphalt.
Yeah.
What I'm hoping is that working with Mike Cerrone on our streets department, we'll be able to infill them with that material, almost like a hot glue. I don't know how well, but they did point out, I think to us, that is one of, usually they hear the concern is when they put them down, they hit them in. These are considerable size units. I mean, there's going to be, fork truck is going to be involved, or a front end loader, because we're talking about the entire width of the street. They are, I believe, almost 14 feet in width, because we have to go with a 30 mile per hour. If it was a parking lot, and you said the speed limit was 10,
Right.
it could be a little smaller,
Little
but
ones.
because of the speed, they actually are wider, more of a speed hump than a bump.
Right.
So we're learning kind of as we go too. I thought we made some good steps. We have some good information. And then as we go, just to tell you about other products, there are other products. If we wanted to do like priority roads, if there's somehow that were to come up, they make a product where emergency vehicles could straddle the product. They're called they're more of these smaller bumps. So instead of having one, you put like 3, and then a fire truck would straddle. The issue with that we see is that people may try to straddle it, and that would cause more issues than we would think without a uniform. You know, it's similar if you go to a parking lot that has a speed bump and there's parking spaces on either side, you usually just go around it.
Yep.
You don't go over it. So
Yep.
that's what we're kind of trying to avoid.
Ms. Todd?
Thank you, Chris, for doing a lot of research. I actually read up on it because I really think, you know, the speeding that happens not only in our city but everywhere, and I'm really concerned with safety. So I thought about those rumble strips, you know, like when you fall asleep and you
Yep.
go to the side of the road and it wakes you up. But in researching that, it can work for speeding. Just bring your attention, you know, to the fact of, oh, something's going on, but not recommended for. So that kind of threw that out. But there were quite a few lawsuits that I read about with speed bumps. Municipalities were facing with damage to cars, people falling over them, just
People walking and falling over.
walking and falling over them.
Okay.
So I saw that as well. And it basically came down to the best thing for traffic calming is lowering the speed limit, which Ms. Patrick did bring up. I mean, you know, but anyway, yeah, so there's a lot of research, you know, to do between Andrew and, you know, what liabilities it might bring on the city, so, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and I'll loop Andrew into our discussions just to
Good.
see. And like I said, we have a good relationship with Albany. We'll see how they
Yeah.
get on with it.
And,
Yeah, could you share the information on what you, with
Sure.
Mr. Wallen, so he doesn't have to like do that work over again?
Absolutely.
All right.
any other questions or comments? So, Ms. Porterfield, would you like to keep this on the agenda for another 2 weeks, or have
Well,
it very bad?
Let us get a little bit, and I'll touch base about when we put it on. Just because I just wanted to give you an update, kind of where we're thinking. Is there any opposition to the first test location? I guess that would be the thought. Is everybody kind of on board? And these are not permanent locations, so if we have that buy-in, I think that's the first step, and we have the money, and we have it on contract, so we can move forward. Great.
Ms. Farming?
Yeah, I think instead of asking us, you might want to ask the neighborhood, because they're going to be the ones hearing the noise and most impacted.
Well, I mean, I guess that's the next part of it, is that, do we want to get to that level? I mean, you know, the city of Rochester, that's where they start. They start with more of a neighborhood petition, and the petition starts more like the sidewalk program, but that will undoubtedly add some time. So, but once again, this is more of I don't want to push it back to the council, but it is a kind of a council initiative that we're working on if we'd like to. Because that was one of the things, I wasn't in this era, but Mr. Cluccio did tell me that at some point there were speed humps, dips at Eastern Avenue, and they were removed due to noise complaints. Those were permanent, because they were actually in the asphalt, or these are temporary, but there will be some substantial labor to put these in.
So I know for me personally, I definitely agree with trying something. This has been an ongoing issue, and there's been a lot of work and effort that's already been invested in this alternative. So I at least want to trial this, and like you said, it's not permanent. So if there are better options, we'll have the ability to readdress. So if there are no further items to the fall of the Public Safety Committee, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So,
Second.
All those in favor?
Thank you.
Adjourned.
Thank you.
So I'd like to call government operations to order, please. We have 2 items on the agenda. First is a discussion around filling vacant positions within the city workforce, and that will be discussed by President Porterfield.
Thank you. So we talked about this a couple of weeks ago because we talked about how many openings we have and whether we should do something a little bit permanent in terms of expanding the residency to the county and not just people who live within the city. So there's some who were in favor of that and some who weren't. What the discussion was is that the mayor, if we submitted someone who lived in the county and did not live within the city, then it would be up to the residency board actually to that the mayor would have to convene in order for us to give a waiver or not. So at this point in time, what I'm recommending is that we look at making sure that we convene the residency board. And I would have to ask the mayor when's the last time the board met, because I wouldn't know. I don't know the answer to that. Or doesn't meet regularly?
It's called at my discretion. So last time it met was to entertain the waiver for Commissioner Islands.
So, and, so we have, so the members of the board,
Are appointed by me.
and Corporation Council and the council president, is what I understand, all three of us have opportunity to be a part of that?
I think the code speaks to who's on the
I'd have
board.
to review it. I don't
Okay.
think that's correct.
Well, Mr. Colden gave us the code last time, and that's what I found in the code.
Okay, if that's what it says.
So, so what I would like us to at least have the board ready when people start submitting. I know that at least one council member has told me that he submitted, someone submitted an application who doesn't live within the county. And so when that person comes forward, that the board be ready at that time for us to be able to look at that application or that person.
That was sent to me, or?
I don't know where it is at this point. I don't think, they wouldn't send it directly to you. They would go through the normal process to see if they met the criteria.
I said if council members have names, send it to me. I'm the appointing authority, so people don't get hired unless.
Well, they want to make sure they qualified for the position first and then
Yes,
give it to you.
I
Yes.
agree with that.
Okay. Okay. So, again, we could talk about that, Mayor, but I would like us to have the board ready when that opportunity comes, so we can appoint people.
I forgot who I was asking permission from. But, I mean, doesn't that just assume that we are indeed going to convene the residency board instead of what the practice has been in terms of the mayor appointing his own hires? I mean, why would we jump to that step without first thinking again about whether the council was in favor of changing residency requirements?
It's not changing anything. The residency board is already written into the code. It exists. So what the mayor said is that if there are people within the county who did not live in the city and want to apply, then he would have to, then we would have to look at giving them a waiver. And that waiver is, the mayor convenes a residency board, but the residency board is the one that actually votes on that. So we haven't changed anything.
Well, okay, that hasn't been the practice, though, right? I think that the mayor has been able to use his discretion on whether he wanted to waive a requirement? No?
No, you can hire anybody wherever they live for 6 months, then
Okay, and then
you
they
have to
have
go to the residency review board. I have not done it for part-time positions or temporary positions. There's been some that might have gone over the 6 months, but they're more technical issues than, a permanent competitive position within civil service.
So, does that answer your question?
Yeah, that does answer the question.
I don't know what our current job announcements state, but will we be able to update it to say that pending further review, or there's this residency board that is willing to make a determination?
I'm sorry, can you say that one more time?
So if there's a board that's going to review residency requirements, so is that outlined on job applications or job announcements that this is an option if you live outside of our city? Just so people are aware of it.
I think the general emphasis has been that you can be appointed, but within 6 months you have to move to the city. And I have not advocated for the residency review board because I believe people should live in the city. Their employees.
And I understand, I agree with that, but I'm looking at the big picture, and the reality is we're just really understaffed, and many departments are. And I know it's been said that it's happening all over the country, however, it's happening here, so it's up to us to figure out a resolution for that. So, for that reason, I think that we should really consider expanding the residency to the county. If we're not there at this point in time, and I definitely, which I would definitely want to revisit, make sure that we make a final decision on that, but that we should at least make sure that the residency board is prepared if someone meets all of the qualification, gets referred to the mayor, and need that waiver, because if they're not willing to move within the city in 6 months, then people aren't going to want to take a job that at any given time they could lose. So that, to me, is the reason that we wanted to make sure that we give them that waiver.
Any discussion around that? Okay, so, next item on the agenda is the appointment of the Capital Regional Land Bank Board.
So we have with us, okay, yes. We have with us David Hogenkamp, Rich Russo, and Rich Paterni, all to our two county legislators. And David, from the land bank, is going to actually, before he asked about the appointment, just wants to give us a little bit background on what the land bank's been doing for the last 10 years.
So, thank you.
Are you going to talk?
I'll talk a little,
Okay,
if
you
it's
wanna
okay
talk?
with you.
It's fine with me. You
So-
got it. It's up to you.
Very good. Madam President, Mr. Mayor, council members, I thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I thank you for having us here tonight. We do have two items. One is a request for a reappointment of one of our board members. But we thought because it's July, in July of 2012, we incepted the land bank. Some former members that were here within this government body. And we've had a pretty successful 10-year run. And I thought it would be helpful, educational, and insightful to show you what we've been doing over the last 10 years with dollars that we have recovered or that were awarded from the 2008 foreclosure crisis, in which our attorney generals took the action to go after financial institutions and recover some of the damage that was done to our communities. So just to start off, right, our mission statement, it's all about strengthening neighborhoods through removing blight and removing structures that are, as Mr. Merrill would say, the worst of the worst, right? So improvement of those existing structures and returning vacant and abandoned property to productive use. And we've done quite a bit of that over the last 10 years. We've got a 7-member board. You can see how we're appointed and what the board is made up of. You'll note that there's the City of Amsterdam residents there, because back in 2012, 2013, it was thought, when we were one of only 3 land banks, which there are over 20 now, the strength of our application lied in the fact that the City of Schenectady, the County of Schenectady, and the City of Amsterdam, all cities that are all communities that I think suffered greatly through the foreclosure crisis. And we were awarded that council, so that's why you see some City of Amsterdam folks there. I've said this a number of times to leadership, to council members, to individuals. We're just a tool in the toolbox, right? I serve at the pleasure of each one of you and at the community at large. As a chairman, we have taken this tool, we keep it sharp with dollars that we've gotten from the attorney generals, with dollars that we've gotten from the city and county, and from the City of Amsterdam. And we really put this thing into high gear when we put it into, frankly, into our Unified Economic Development Team, which is our Metroplex. David Hogenkamp, I know he's sitting in front of us, but without his leadership, without his commitment, without his ability to really manage, I think we would be doing a good job. We're doing an outstanding job. So we've put over a number of projects have come to play. Hamilton Hill neighborhood, in particular, the Electric City Barn, DePaul's Joe Allen Apartments, Cocoa House expansion, demolition of a number of properties to make way for community buildings, right? Eastern Avenue, one of the first corridors that we worked on, right? We have a corridor strategy. It's not individual houses, it's how do we improve corridors throughout our community to create momentum. So in the Eastern Avenue neighborhood, we've done well over 25 demolitions. We created our first pocket park in almost 25 years, back in 2013, 2014, Tribute Park. We improved numerous buildings. And what was St. Mary's? $25 million in investment? Renaissance Square was a $25 million investment by home leasing out of Rochester. So talk about leverage, right? We probably put $1 million and change into that project, a little less, and $25 million was pulled through from independent developers. That's about investment confidence. So we continue in Mount Pleasant Library, Crane Street, Thriving Neighborhoods Challenge, Orchard Park, Wallingford Splash Pad, a great ribbon cutting on Friday night, lots of attendance. Thank you, Madam President, Mr. Mayor, for being there. Boys and Girls Club, and then DePaul has committed, and they put an application in for another $22 million project on Crane Street. So this is as a direct result of what the land bank has done, whether that's to remove properties, to do the demolition, to create the momentum and the investment confidence that I've already talked about, because we take out that portion of the project that makes it work for these developers, right? And they're very sophisticated in what they're doing. But we have created that momentum, that engine, and we want to continue to create that momentum and that engine. Some of what we've done in the city of Amsterdam, just so you know, 22 vacant blighted properties were completely taken down. If you've come through Route 5 corridor, driven into Amsterdam, that portion of the neighborhood that was in decay, it was in decline. We took down all of the buildings. DePaul came in, and with the help of Amsterdam Housing Authority, are putting in $24 million?
Excuse me.
Yeah. $20 plus million project. That's enormous. We believe strongly that in the city of Amsterdam alone, because of the momentum that we put in play, they got the DRI, they got the downtown investment grant, and they got developers that have come in and said, this is a community that's worth investing in. So what have we done? We've received, we haven't taken anything, we've received almost $10 million in supportive funding through the Attorney General, through Enterprise, and through a number of other grant programs. We've partnered with you in the city and in the city of Amsterdam on over 200 demolitions. I think we probably still have a few hundred that would be considered worthy of a shovel. But more importantly, we've put over 250 units of either planned or renovated housing in play, right? Affordable housing, commitments to our community. How do we revitalize? We make it real for the individuals who live in these communities. That's $100 million of leverage investment. 10x in my book is a wise investment. 10 million equals 100 million in leverage investment. So we've got great partners with Better Community Neighborhoods, with Habitat. We've done a number of projects with them. And we've gotten those results because we've got a great board. We've got some of our members here. We've got Rich Attorney, a fellow county legislator in the city of Schenectady. We've got Joe Berlant, who came out of Housing and Urban Development and has been with us for a number of years. And I regard, in very high regard, as our treasurer and the fiduciary of all this money that we've received and we put in play. And again, I just want to reiterate, we are a tool. We are efficient. We run on a staff of 1.5, unlike some agencies that need multiples. And I'm not casting a stone. I'm simply saying that David here in the city of Schenectady and the county, we have a project manager in the city of Amsterdam. We've executed extremely well. And I appreciate my board members and the commitment that we have from the community, from leadership, and from you, Madam President. So more to come, lots of great projects. I'm happy to answer any questions. We do want to celebrate our 10-year anniversary. We think we've earned the stripe of saying, job well done, but it really has to come out of the community. Like I said, I'm happy to answer questions. I am here formally to ask for a reappointment of one of our members. So.
I do.
I'm sorry.
No problem. I just want to say that over the years, working with Mr. Hogenkamp and working with Legislator Russo has been a pleasure. Any project that we've been involved in, and I mean, obviously, you are just a tremendous resource and have great. Both of you have great vision, but I mean, the work that you put in to these projects over the years has just been phenomenal.
It's fun work. Kristen Diott is on our board as well. Helped a lot with the vision. Maurice Brown's been very helpful, and thank you to Mayor and to all the council for the support. I probably drive Andrew crazy most of the time, but I appreciate him as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I do want to reiterate, Kristen on our board, Maurice, we went to a New York State Housing Land Bank conference not too long ago. We have committed people in this room, in this community, and I'm grateful to be part of that kind of momentum and that kind of leadership.
Rich, you should also add that the fact that the leadership of this group has brought in the it's our $100 million. And it's also brought us continued, every time that we apply, we get money because we produce results.
Yeah, Joe brings up a great point. It's all about the performance. That's Joe Berlant.
Do you want to come up so that the council who has not met you can meet you?
So as Joe comes up, I will say, it is that, right? It's not quite Hunger Games, but it is absolutely, if we are not effective, we're not going to win in those grant rounds. And I will tell you that I went and stumped a little bit with Senator Rinchie. $50 million is being pulled through to the land banks. That doesn't excuse that I have an ARPA application in for land banks, just so it's clear. $50 million is getting pulled through that'll be applied to those 23 land banks, us being one of them. And another $250 million or 400?
Oh, just in housing community renewal programs. They want the land banks to continue to be supported so that they can come up with other projects like the DePaul project on Spring Street. So that's the focused effort we're trying to take in partnership and really following the lead of what the city is doing.
And as Joe pointed out, past performance definitely drives whether or not you're going to continue to get some of that support.
It's a matter of, for those of you who don't know me, I'm the retired Deputy Director of Development for the city. Was here in the 1990s. Marion's well aware of that, and the mayor too. We had a housing division here at that point. We were doing housing activities. We didn't do as much as what the land bank has been able to do because it's an effective use of funding without having to go through some of the red tape that a government agency has to be able to do. And it's been a great time to be able to work with all the folks that are there. We've got a committed group. We've only had a couple of changes on the board, and that's also helped, I think, quite a bit, that the people have experience now in what they're doing. So, and I'm going to appoint you to the city council, so I hope that you will reappoint me, but if not, then if we have somebody in mind who also will be able to contribute to the land bank.
It's an active board. It's not a show up once in a while. It's definitely an active board, but we run very efficiently. And we appreciate Joe's participation. We appreciate Legislator Attorney's participation, Kristen Diott, and we're open to continuing to see that board thrive.
And our meetings are public.
What I'd like to first say is thank you for the work that you're doing. Okay? And I think that is important. You know, we do base future decisions, we make informed decisions based on results, but you guys are clearly getting. So, you know, and this isn't just about beautification. This really does change the material condition of people that live in these neighborhoods.
Absolutely.
So I just want to extend my appreciation to you and the team.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Councilman Farrell.
Entertain a motion to appoint.
So at this time, I'd like to make the motion.
I'll move it.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. You're in.
Thank you very much. I appreciate everyone's support, and I'm open to answer any questions, one-to-ones, or come back and go into any of these projects at your request or individually.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Okay, so motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Adjourn.
I'd like to call to order city development and planning. We have 9 items on the agenda. The first item is a revocable licensing agreement with Indira Prasad for a patio and handicap accessible ramp at 1570 State Street. Mr. Wallen.
Hello.
Hello.
The property at 1570 State Street constructed a patio with handicap accessible ramp. The patio is what I would call a semi-permanent patio. It is a wall filled. It is not something that would be revocable, similar to a planter or a sign. Upon inspection, it was found that the wall and the ramp are in the city right away on this corner by about 5 feet in each. So it is not exactly off the sidewalk, but it is within there. It's about 7 feet and 10 feet off the curb respectively. For a obstruction like this in the right of way, a revocable licensing agreement is required for the property.
All right, so this was put in without coming to the city for a permit?
That is what I believe is, there's no such thing as for this. I think what we think is it through a building permit for a patio, and it was a bit of a miscommunication of where the right of way was. Usually it's on the backside of the sidewalk. In these particular cases, it was a little extra wide. So it was actually 5 feet off the backside of the sidewalk. And on State Street, we have an exceptionally larger right of way. So when they came in, I don't know how it was actually brought to my attention, but when it was, and we looked at it, we found that it was 5 feet in both directions. For a patio, it wasn't necessarily something that went to planning. And planning, usually if a newer building is being built and there's a site plan, we would make the comments of what would be required. This was an existing building with a patio being built, almost like a deck. So I don't think it went through the same procedures as most. So it's something that we are internally going to have to discuss on how we kind of close that little loophole, if you will. But it is there. So
And does it obstruct the sidewalk at all?
it does not obstruct the sidewalk.
Mr. Colvin?
I know the application came from Indira Prasad. I believe there may be two people who own that property. I believe it's Indira Prasad, and I think there's another Prasad that may be the owner of that property. So if the council is to move forward with this legislative request, I would request that it be the owner of the property, Indira Prasad, and if there's another owner, right, I want to make sure that both of them enter into this agreement, that it's not just, one of the two owners.
Okay. So we would need the other owner's name. Do you know that?
I do not have it on me, but we can.
I don't have it on me, but we can
for
get the most recent deed, and
And we'll have it in time for,
I'll put it in for the resolution if it does pass tonight.
okay,
It is not obstructing the sidewalk.
okay.
We are working with them on making sure that the sidewalk is up to code on the one particular side, not the State Street side. I can't go to the cross street at this time. But on State Street, it is off, but we have a particularly wide right of way going up State Street as it's Route 5. So
Are there other questions?
I'll move this.
I'll second it with the idea that we'll put the name,
The
the
names,
other name
yes.
in. Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. The next item on the agenda is discussion of hosting quarterly meetings, city council meetings outside of City Hall.
Thank you, Madam President. I know we've had this on the agenda a few times, so I'm looking forward to announcing some updates that'll hopefully get this ball moving forward. Looking at the idea of where to host this type of engagement, my two thoughts consistently came back to the Boys and Girls Club, and also potentially partnering with the Schenectady High School, just thinking of venue size and volume of getting people from the community into a room, talking about a potential topic. Second, thinking more about a date. I think being in the summer, it's important to recognize that people are still vacationing, so looking to have something in place after August. The time frame that I kept coming back to was 6:30 to 8:30 at night, just thinking of appropriate time for people to get settled in. And then also understanding that Mondays don't necessarily work for us as city council members, and also Fridays may be too late in the week. We'll need to do some investigation to make sure that we're not scheduling something that is in place with other meetings that are functioning throughout the city. So I resonated on Tuesdays. So I was essentially thinking of September 20th, September 27th, or October 4th, and then all this information I can provide to the council members in an email. Next, thinking of the format, and I think it's important to foot stomp that compromising is important, and taking into consideration all of the council members' feedback so that we can make sure we're actioning items for the benefit of the community. I think looking at how to best create an agenda around this, I think a town hall would make sense. And I think as long as we can build an appropriate agenda, establish clear guidelines for people to speak, that way we would have the opportunity to respond back. I think as long as we're intentional and have a clear objective around what the meeting is, I think we can keep our comments focused and use this as an opportunity to, again, bring the messaging, bring ourselves to the community, which countlessly has been vocalized as an ask from the community. And this brings me to what potential topics. So our last meeting, ended with Ms. Porterfield and Ms. Patrick recommending community banking and noise ordinances, which I don't know if anyone else experienced that last night. I did myself. However, there's been continuous conversation throughout our community about rent and how some people aren't able to make rent, and also listening from the other angle, which is from our landlords, which are vocalizing just continued discomfort. So I want to make it clear that choosing a potential topic would not mean that we are taking anyone's side, just using this as an opportunity to get more information and provide people the opportunity to vocalize their issues or stances, which is why I would recommend our first topic being rent stabilization, which is a nice segue into what Mr. Farley is going to be discussing. So I'm all ears. Week after week, I've been coming back with some updates, so I'm willing to make any adjustments and adapt around what the council members will request. But I think at this time, I think it is just choosing a topic collectively, and then I can fine-tune some details and selecting a future date to announce to the community.
Well, first of all, thank you for doing the work and for coming back to the council and considering all the things that have been put forward, so I do appreciate that. And it sounds like we've landed on it's going to be more of a town hall as opposed to a city council meeting based on what you've said, so I'm certainly open to that, us moving in that direction, and I don't have a particular date, just let us after the summer. So, anyone else have any? Mr. Farley?
So I just think anytime we get opportunity to interface with the community, and I think sometimes change of setting can kind of lend itself to a more robust conversation. And so I'm all for it. I just wanted to give my support for that. I think we should definitely do that.
So, Mr. Williams, are you asking like all of the council to be there? I mean, how are you
So I think
moving that forward?
taking into consideration what a true council meeting outside of City Hall would look like, I think a lot of the discomfort is we don't want to bore people around what we do. We try to make it exciting and invigorating for the community. And some of the, I think it's exciting. But being aware of just the nuances of what we do, it might not appeal to everyone. So I think creating a format to make it more of an amenable conversation. But I think it is a very strong message that needs to get sent to the community that we all collectively need to be out there present and available. And I know that things happen, I know that emergencies arise, but I think if we have the time to coordinate a date, I would hope that all the council members can find the opportunity to put in their schedule and make a conscientious effort to be present.
Is your hand up?
Yeah, I have a question. I think it's been for Andrew. So like having us all in the town hall, would we still be within the parameters, or would that make cause any further complications of the meeting laws?
It depends. I mean, I wish I could give you a better answer than it depends. It depends what actions you're going to be taking. You know, if you're resolving to take some type of official action, then it's, you know, obviously, you know, open meeting. If you're there for town hall to allow people to just kind of give you, you know, a piece of their mind maybe, or just, you know, their input, then you're not dealing with open meeting law stuff, so to speak, right? You're not subject to open meetings law.
So I thought, well, based on like a town hall, I'm just thinking we're there to just get information from people and get their input. We heard a man come to the rail the other day, and, you know, unsolicited. He had a situation, so he came. So I think that's one of the reasons this came about, that particular topic regarding rent. So I really just would ask the other council members where they are with this in terms of participation or dates. You know, it's going to take all of us to do. Hi, Mr. Toro.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. I like the town hall. Mr. Farley, you just brought that up, so we probably wouldn't be able to interact or give advice. So that leaves me a little bit confused right now as well.
You can give advice, you can't give formal, you can't do a formal action.
Exactly.
Okay, all right, so we can answer, okay.
Mhm.
So I was just thinking, again, like I say, we can all be there. I like the idea of listening to the constituents and what their concerns are in individual neighborhoods. And again, with dates, you know, I don't know, you know, we all get invited to the neighborhood meetings. I don't know who hosts theirs on a Tuesday, so I'd have to check, you know, because we do like to go to all the neighborhood meetings. Again, I don't know if we might just want to travel there, we're in each neighborhood. And again, not asking everyone to come to us, but we're going to them. But again, thank you, I think it's very important to hear what they want. That's my thought.
So,
Yeah.
other, Ms. Patrick?
I think that, again, with the date, I think maybe doing a doodle poll or something to see what might work for the majority of us to be able to come to a town meeting.
I think we can just send out an email, it's only 7 for a doodle poll, right? Can we just send an email out?
Sure. Yeah. I think in terms of format, again, even if we knew the topic was going to be housing, for example, we'd probably want some landlords, and we'd probably want, you know, I mean, it might be important to have somebody speak, even, you know, or 1 or 2 people speak, and then people responding. But I'm just saying, I mean, it might not be us, but I think the idea of listening and hearing constituent concerns is great. I think that is why we go to the neighborhood meetings as well.
Well, generally, town hall format doesn't have a speaker necessarily, it's just for everyone there, whether it be landlords or tenants or everybody, just to, like, we introduce the topic, and then people give their input.
Right, I
As
guess
opposed to.
having somebody introduce the topic,
Oh,
maybe,
of course.
you know, somebody that's an expert or whatever, I think is a good thing. Like the meeting that we had with the Office of Cannabis Management, where, you know, we were able to hear some information. I don't know, but
Well, it depends on the topic.
just 2 cents on format, just 2 cents on my 2 cents.
Yeah, because it depends on the topic, I don't know if it necessarily landed on one.
Right.
So you said to check the dates for the neighborhood associations, to make sure we're
I
not.
guess
okay.
they start up in the fall again.
To make sure that we're not hitting up against theirs. Okay,
Yeah,
that's a good idea.
I know Upper Union is a Tuesday, but
Not sure which Tuesday.
I think must be the 2nd.
Other input, questions, comments? Willingness to participate or not? Is everyone?
If the date, I mean, yeah, I mean, I'd show up if the date was, we'll give you our input on our dates. Yeah. I think the idea of doing it in the fall, rather than the summer, is a good one.
So if you could, are we gonna, I guess we're gonna need to settle on a topic, and would you send out the dates that, okay. So, or did you want to discuss setting on the topic tonight, or do you want to just send that out in the request when you send out the email for the dates?
So I don't know how appropriate it would be to kind of comment after we close while Kamani is speaking or
Okay.
Mr. Farley is speaking, but I think hearing out his next agenda item on the actual topic of rent stabilization will probably assist in getting people's heads wrapped around it. But I think overall, just using this as a platform to hear from the community, I would like to select the topic of rent stabilization. And taking into consideration what Ms. Patrick was mentioning around trying to capture something that has already been discussed. I think in our current just traveling throughout the city, it's an issue that's growing regardless of whether on any one side or the other. So I think as a council, it's our opportunity to be at the forefront of these types of conversations. And the only way we're able to make appropriate judgments is having an objective understanding of what's going on, and that only starts with hearing from the people collectively.
Is there any further discussion on this topic? Ms. Patrick?
Again, I think I liked what you had to say, Mr. Williams, about trying to make sure that we weren't coming out in favor or not in favor of something. So I think even perception-wise, I think if the topic was housing issues or something like that, but to say, and I want to hear what Mr. Fowley is going to talk to us about on the next item, but I mean, to say rent stabilization might make it seem like we're skewing in one direction over another. But I don't know how to better word it, but.
Ms. Williams?
And then absolutely messaging matters. These are just to capture what I was going to be talking about. When we actually rolled out to the community, definitely taking into consideration those types of elements is important. And that's why I think it's imperative of us all to be together, because although we're one body that represents the city at large, if we're being honest and intentional, we all have niches that we kind of cater to naturally. We all don't travel together in one group. So I think taking in all of our feedback and input, I think we'll be able to naturally hit all of those corners of the community so that we are taking into consideration everything and not seeming too one-sided.
Any other discussion? Okay, so we'll wait for the email from you on the date so we can get some feedback on that and come up with a date and move forward with it. So thanks for the work you've done on this. Our next item for discussion, item number 3, is rent stabilization. Mr. Farley.
Thank you, Madam President. So, one of the benefits of living in the community that have, getting such a great financial audit, once again, kudos to the team here, to the mayor and their team for diligent work, is tax stabilization. Tax stabilization can and should correlate to housing price stabilization. So I guess I just wanted to open up the conversation with the council because of all the feedback that we've been getting, and I've been, listening to people, and I really want to see is there a way for us to create, to incentivize, some housing stabilization. So that's really where I wanted to go with this conversation. People in the community are really hurting. Doing some of the research, I realized it says that $100 raise rent, $100 in median rent equates to a 9% increase in homelessness. So this isn't a conversation that we can just have in abstract ways. Like this is real way that is impacting people in their material conditions of people's lives. So I think that I look forward to just kind of opening up this conversation and getting feedback from fellow council members to see what your thoughts are.
Mr. Toro.
Can you tell me a little bit more, like, what are you looking for us to say? Or, I'm sorry, I couldn't follow along.
Sure.
Yeah.
So
Tell us what you're thinking.
So what I'm thinking, and what I'm hearing, and what we heard in our last city council meeting is that people heard, right? And we often talk about our tax base being pretty stable, right? So what I'm saying is that when you are living in a community that has a stable tax base, that should correlate to stable housing prices for people. It should. I don't know that that's necessarily the case right now. So my question is, what are your thoughts? And should we be thinking about ways as a council that we can incentivize rent prices to be more stable? Because what we're hearing, they're not. And people are losing their houses and their housing. And that's something that we're hearing in every corner of the city. And I think it's something that we need to be talking about. How can we address that?
So just to bring you back to when the gentleman came to the council meeting last week. Last week, yes. And his rent went up $200. That's pretty significant. And he made it clear that it was almost his entire monthly income. So now he has a place to live, but now he's got to figure out how he's going to eat. And so I think that we'd be remiss if we didn't, and he's not the only person. I've had emails, et cetera, from people that have said the same thing. My rent's gone up like $200, and I just didn't know that rents went up like that. So I think that it's that we should be considering that. And I know that currently the city does not have any kind of rent control or rent stabilization. We don't. They do have that in New York City. So there's no cap. We can't say this is the most you can charge for somebody to rent your apartment. It's up to a landlord. So, what do we do about that? Do we create more homelessness? I mean, how do we address that? So I think that's the conversation that's before us now. Or do you think it's not something that we don't need to address? Mr. Mayor?
Madam Chair, just want to recap, some of the things that are, we've seen for a long time, the value of property in Schenectady was very low. So we've seen the things that we've done collectively with economic development, investments in the neighborhood that have increased the values and have also tied to the national housing market. The taxes here, we cut them 5 years in a row. The last 2 years have been no increase, and the last year was no increase. And that restriction is really put on us by the ARPA money, which says you can't use it to lower taxes. So I think people are happy that we're keeping the services up, doing it. But you have to remember that the tax bill that people pay, roughly half of it's the school district, a little over 30% is the city's tax bill, and a little under 20% is the county's portion of it. People tend to focus it's always the city is the point on property taxes, even though we're a smaller component of that. In terms of housing, just what the land bank had outlined, those units that have been put up in other projects here are income-based, so that tenants in that basically pay 30% of their income. So if they're making $1,000 a month, they're paying $300. There can be a little bit of variance in that depending on the timing and the exact nature of the unit they're in. There's been a lot of, in that there's a market study for what's fair rent. And been a lot of people who've been quoting those higher numbers for those units and saying people are paying the fair market rent, which is not true. Those projects are designed to create safe and decent housing for individuals who are not don't have the income to afford to live there. It's how do we do more of those projects? How do we work with the Housing Authority to get more Section 8 vouchers? Again, that individual who haven't had the chance to talk to you since the last meeting, probably qualifies for a Section 8 voucher, and there's a waiting list for that, even though sometimes you bypass the status on that if there's hardship or extreme circumstances that come into play, and we're seeing more and more individuals that are in that set of circumstances, which are really beyond their control and are adversely affecting them. And so how do we, again, work with them being the Housing Authority to match those people up to get more vouchers or create some of this additional housing that is income-based that allows them to have safe and decent housing.
Well, so, not everyone has Section 8, and some of it, so I think some of this is not just housing developments, it's people are renting from individuals, which is, I think, this gentleman's situation. And I didn't ask him about his personal thing, and even if I knew, I wouldn't talk about it here. And then with that, even some of the private housing, people are reluctant to accept Section 8. I've heard that time and time again. People look for housing, and I know that you're not supposed to be able to turn people away based on how their ability to pay the rent.
If somebody is doing it.
I do know that. True, but it happens. And if you've ever even looked at, and I've helped people look for apartments, if you've ever looked, it specifically says in there, no, people say no Section 8. They will say that. No DSS. So I've seen those people advertising and saying, we will not accept this type of payment for your rent. So I know it's illegal, but it does happen. Mr. Farley?
Yeah, so and I would just add that, to the mayor's point, there are, interventions and things happening to address, finding people safe and adequate housing. I would just say that, like, that Section 8 waiting list can be extremely lengthy. So, and you know, just because there are the programs and there are, doesn't mean that the programs are going to address the problem. And what I'm saying is that, is there a way that we can kind of work and create the setting conditions to where people don't have to seek out some of those programs, and maybe take the pressure off of some of those programs so they can work a little more efficiently? And, you know, is that something that is within our wheelhouse to do? Again, $100 in median rent increase correlates to 9% increase in homelessness. That's pretty stark numbers, and I think that we have to look at this with some level of urgency because it's impacting our community. So I'm not.
Mr. Toro?
Agreed, Mr. Fonda, absolutely. Things are they're tough out there. Mr. Palomeni speaks every council meeting on, you know, how bad things are getting with our economy. But on the other side of that, you need to look at the landlord situation. You don't know what they're facing at this point. Maybe coming off of 3 years of COVID with no rent that they haven't gotten. So there's a lot of variables here that we need to think about and talk about. I don't think there should be rent caps at all for personal property. I just don't think that's right. You say they do it in New York. I don't know any of that. But again, people have, everyone has their own expenses that they need to take care of. And we don't know anyone's personal finances on that. But again, this gentleman and so many people, and I think our city does a damn good job of taking care of our people. I really think we do. There's always room for improvement, but I think, you know, out there in the community, you see it at school, we all see it. We're doing one hell of a job. We're gonna just keep going.
Mr. Williams?
And that's why I think it's really important to have a town hall, because I would have to disagree. I've heard from both sides, and I've had conversations with people who are struggling. However, I'm glad you did make the point of there are two sides to every narrative. I've been to Schenectady Landlords Influence and Change meetings, and I know that there are other components to this conversation, but I think it's necessary to look at our options. And I think absent having this conversation, or at least starting, or recognizing that this is an issue, part of the analysis is, are raising the rents effectively meeting what landlords or homeowners are intending it to? So I think unless we admit that this is affecting members of our community, I don't think we'll ever be able to actually get action on some of the discomfort that people are feeling on both sides.
Mr. Farley?
So, and I want us to be mindful that two things can be true, right? People can, you know, there's a lot of variables in this conversation, but I don't think that there, you know, I wouldn't rush to say that we should be talking about it from like two sides, right? Like a landlord and a tenant. I think that, you know, there are, you know, we should be looking and exploring ways that where we can incentivize it for landlords to have some sort of rent stabilization for the people that are renting their properties. I think that we, you know, there might be ways for us to look at how do we give some, you know, as a property owner, some maybe some cost assurance, right? That they know, you know, that their taxes, going to the mayor's point, and there's other entities that have to be involved, aren't going to spike, you know, here, and then they know that, okay, well, I know that this is what I can make this projection a couple of years out, that I'll be staying within these parameters, and then I pass, you know, some of that savings along to the person that's renting. So, you know, again, I don't think that we're going to come up with all the answers here. I just think that I wouldn't want the conversation to go in a direction to where it's like saying like it's, you know, that the outcome or where we land couldn't be mutually beneficial, because it can be. It can be. So that would be the direction I'd like to see the conversation go.
Mayor?
I'm trying to recall, there's something in the state statute which I think it's units built before 1974 having more than 6 units.
Yes.
you have to do a study, and if the vacancy rate is below 5%, then there's some things that trip within the locality. If it's above 5%, then you don't have the option.
Right.
And I again, apologize, I can't remember all the details or mechanics of that, but that, something again, that wouldn't happen overnight. You have to actually do the study, and I don't know if that information is compiled in the annual census, so that it might have been done fairly recently, or we would have a fairly accurate baseline to work from.
Mr. Coleman?
Yeah, the mayor is correct. It's the Emergency Tenant Protection Act, which was passed in 2019. You have to have a study, as the mayor indicated, to confirm that the applicable jurisdiction has less than a 5% vacancy rate. And it does not apply to buildings containing less than 6 units, rent-controlled apartments, non-profit units, housing supervised by the government, which would be, obviously those people with housing choice vouchers, and substantially rehabilitated housing and housing within buildings completed after 1973. So when you look at it, it's probably going to be a very small number of units that would be a part of it. Seems as though, well, it wouldn't apply to two-family homes, single-family homes, which, looking at the numbers across the city, I think that's primarily what we're seeing, right? Two-family homes and single-family homes that are being rented out. So stabilization, even if the vacancy rate is under 5%, it would not, any stabilization would not apply to those units.
I would just add that, if we're looking at, a small amount of units, even if it is a very small amount of units, when we look at it as to how that translates into somebody's actual, the livelihood of people living in the city, that makes a huge difference, So I was wondering, I appreciate that clarification with that, definitely is something I still think that we need to be looking at.
No, I was just thinking about that, and I think that probably lends itself, I'm sorry, I didn't ask her.
Go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
That when you think about a place like New York City, most of their housing is above 6 units.
Right.
Probably. So
So that-
the idea that larger, municipalities like that have rent control, I understand that now. I guess that must be part of this same code.
So,
Right.
right, so that was legislation that was passed, so, does that mean that we couldn't consider something? I know, understand that we don't have many 6 housing units, well, we have a few more now than we did a few years ago, units that are above 6, but many people rent from, rent either 2-family or 1-family homes, even up to 4, actually. So, I think it's still a conversation that we need to have, and how do we address it? It's going to cause homelessness. It's going to cause people to not be able to eat. We can't just say, well, okay, and I'm not saying that I have a solution. Clearly, I don't. But I think that we do need to talk about what a solution could be, and we should also hear from people, and we would need to do a lot of homework initially, and also I was thinking about who we could have come and speak in terms of the housing. I would just, give some suggestion if that's what we're going to do. And, but have that conversation and include landlords as well as tenants, because, as I always say, how you see it depends on where you sit. And so I know that landlords see it one way and tenants see it another way. But to have someone's rent increase by what amounted to over 30%, that's significant. If we ever raise taxes 30%, people would just go out of their minds. So, we have to look, this is like, you've really increased it by a significant amount of money, a person's income. Mr. Farley?
And I also, again, a couple meetings back, we had landlords come to the rail, and something that I heard them saying multiple times was, some of the rough conditions that they're in, and speaking with them, how they're struggling themselves to make ends meet, and it seemed like a lot of that was, based on the tenants that are living in their housing, which is ridiculous. For someone to have to go through some of the things that they were going through. The point, I want to make sure that I'm intentional about focusing the conversation in a way of a solution that can be mutually beneficial. And I don't just think that, you know, if I heard the landlords can continue to say affordable housing, right? And I think affordable is a relative term, right? But, you know, if we can look at what is out there and to see maybe that there's something that we could apply here that would be mutually beneficial, even if it's only for a small number of units. If, you know, every unit that is safe, affordable, and someone lives in there, that's somebody that's not homeless. Somebody that's not, you know, on the, you know, Section 8 waiting list, which I don't know how many of the council members are familiar with the length of those, you know, waiting lists. So I just like, it's something that even if it doesn't look like a large amount of numbers of units, it is a large amount of impact if it's something that we can find that's feasible.
Mr. Williams?
And I think one of my final points is I look at the direction our city's moving towards, where we've had conversations over the past few years about community policing and community schools, and the idea of looking at a situation from multiple angles to understand what an approach can be, I think allows us to just look at things through a critical lens and not pigeonholing ourselves to only responding through tried and true measures. So I just think having a conversation isn't saying that we've made our mind up, and just opens up the dialogue.
Anyone else? So, am I understanding that between the two of that you want to have the town hall and have rent be the topic?
You have to talk about stabilization. I wouldn't be opposed to that.
Right, so we can send it out as that being one of the topics, and then we'll all respond to that. I definitely, you know, I said it before, I said it again, I'll say it again. I think that's definitely a conversation that we need to have and hear all aspects of the conversation, and just do it in a mindful way that people know that we're listening, both landlords and tenants know that we're listening to the problems in the community. Mr. Mayor?
I don't want to create controversies. I believe Mr. Williams' concept to go out to town meetings. On this path, if you're going to have that as a topic, aren't you better off having it in a city council meeting where it's recorded in the minutes of the meeting, and it may then create a basis for legislative action? Or if you do it at the town hall, it's all informal, it's nice narrative, but it may not give you the full weight that you want from it.
So, I guess this is a question for you. So, Mr. Colvin, if we do a town hall format that's like, we just like got together, or do we call it a special meeting? I mean, what can we do about that?
I can't advise you on what, obviously, what to do. I mean, you're certainly, you know, can have a town hall meeting as a council. I think what the mayor's driving at is if there's some legislative action that takes place at some point in the future, you obviously, you know, for it to be, you know, to take action, there has to be some basis generally, a lot of times. You know, you maybe, you know, you can take notes and all of that, but if there's legislation that's going to be happening at some point in the future, I would advise the council to have some type of basis for taking that action. And if, you know, things are informally done at a town hall, and you don't have minutes and you don't have, you know, some type of record of what took place, it becomes more difficult to legislate with that informality.
Mr. Carlin?
So I, you know, why not do both, right? Like, why can't we, you know, why can't we do both? I think that having a town hall format gives people a chance to, you know, participate and give us some information in a different setting. And, you know, I don't think that we want to let the good be the enemy of the great. Two things can be true. We do the town hall, and we, you know, I can have host a special meeting or whatever, you know, recommendation that our corporation council is saying we can do. But I don't think that we do one in place of the other. I think that it's a significant enough conversation to have in different settings.
I'm not type. I'm not texting anyone, I was just looking up special meetings to see if that was an option. I think that we have to, I mean, and we don't have to make the decision tonight, but I think we definitely have to make a decision. I just pulled it up, but I don't think it's enough here for me to, okay. So it looks like if we called a special meeting, we could call a special meeting for one topic. And that would, it could be a city council special meeting based on that, and that would capture the information as well. So that's another option as opposed to town hall. So, Mr. Farley, this is your topic. I guess it's kind of both of your topics. What would you like to see the next steps on this? What are you asking the council?
Yeah, so I think the next steps would be for Mr. Williams going to send out some dates, and I think that I fully, I wanted to introduce this conversation here, but I think that it definitely lends itself well to whatever format we ultimately decide on. But I think that I would just like to see this conversation happen, and I think that, and I'd like to see welcome council into maybe doing some research as well as to what could be some of the solutions. But this is people's lives that we're talking about here, and I think that that's just something I want to continue.
So I know we had a lot of conversation whether it should be a town hall meeting, or, and the mayor brought fact forward that if it's not official, then it, it doesn't do anything. So chapter 28 does speak to special meetings, so that's another, we could have a special meeting outside of City Hall that, in a larger venue, that would, for that particular topic, and then, still capture the information, and that would satisfy everything. So, yes, Ms. Patrick.
Or we could do a city council meeting here, where we have the recording, we have the city clerk, we have, all the staff, et cetera, right in this building, and do it as part of a city council meeting, right? We could go to a public hearing, or, we obviously had, I think there were 16 different individuals that spoke from the landlord group. We did hear from the one person last week, obviously, at the rail. But I don't know, again, I don't know that we need a special city council meeting. I think we can do it during a city council meeting, if that to fit with the idea of recording and that type of thing.
Well, we can record wherever we go, and so, Mr. Williams, do you have your hand up? I'm sorry.
So I think part of the wanting to get actionable on this is I feel like we keep having a circular conversation of the intent is to have a conversation in the community, what's an appropriate topic, we find an appropriate topic, and if it somehow comes back to it would be easier to maintain it here, I think we kind of miss the overall intent of wanting to meet the community where they are. I understand that there are other already established meeting settings, such as neighborhood associating meetings, but I think we need to be intentional with having a designated time to go out, whether it is a town hall or whether it's a special meeting, which I did recommend first. However, it was recommended that we did not need that.
Right.
I am in favor with doing whatever as long as we can get to the community. That's if I can be very transparent, that's what I want. And I understand that it's not a council of Carl Williams. So I recognize the importance of meeting everyone where they are, but without any other input from the council, I would absolutely recommend having a special meeting at a designated location, and I can put together all the homework assignments that were given to me to get the proper message, get the proper venue, provide some outlines to council members for us to discuss behind the scenes, and that way we can roll this out to the community the appropriate way so people are aware, not so that they can come in full force posturing, just so they can come with their stories so that we can hear them and be able to have validity with how we should respond.
Was the hand up, or is that just thinking, what's that?
Yeah, I prefer not to just beat the dead horse, but why would we, I don't see why we wouldn't want to go to the community. That's my and I don't even know what you're saying. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Like, are we saying, why not do it?
Is your hand up, Ms. Becker?
Yes.
Yes.
So again, I think we keep having this conversation because I think 2 meetings ago, we did decide that we didn't want to do city hall meetings outside of city hall. I think that was the decision, and that's how we got to the town hall meeting place. So I personally would like to stick with that idea.
I don't think it was a final decision, I think it was a discussion. I don't think we finally said, yes, absolutely, no city council meetings outside of town hall. And if somebody else heard it differently, let me know. So, all right, we gotta get something settled here, right, tonight. So are we going to have a town hall and a city council meeting to address this? Because the whole purpose of Mr. Williams bringing this forward was that we actually engage the community outside the community. We go to meetings often, and we sort of hosted one with the cannabis management. We just kind of like helped them, but they really did all the work there. So that we've done that. So I'm not sure why we're opposed to doing more things like that, where people came to that meeting that probably we've never seen in the city council meeting, because it was a topic they were interested in. So I don't see why we are objecting to meeting outside of these 4 walls, or however many walls there are. So I'm not sure why there's a major objection to that. And I think I heard from every council member except Mr. Mudavera. Do you have any thoughts on this?
No, I'm okay with either format.
Either format?
Yes.
So the discussion is like, how do we move forward? Do we just do we do the special meeting, or do we do the town hall and city council meeting, which is more of the same, and will people come to both? Right. Yes, and I was just reminded that we went out to the community when we talked about ARPA. We presented ourselves to the community, so.
Those neighborhood meetings.
What's that?
The neighborhood meetings.
No, we created those meetings. Those meetings were created by us.
No, I think the mayor and the city development office, but that's what I'm talking about. Those neighborhood meetings were really effective.
But they weren't just for, they were specifically for ARPA. It wasn't like the neighborhood association's meeting
Right,
when you
no,
come.
I hear what
So,
you're saying.
Right.
But I'm saying that's what I think we talked about in terms of this idea of a town meeting was the exact same thing. We even said that 2 meetings ago, that those neighborhood meetings were a perfect model of a way to solicit. And the idea was for us to not say anything as city council people, but to go and listen. And I think we all did pretty much go. I know I missed one. I think maybe each of us missed one out of all the, you went to all of them, of those meetings. And they were really informative. So I think that that is a good model. This town hall meeting, neighborhood meeting, whatever you want to call it, is a good model to solicit input on a topic. I think with the cannabis one, again, I mean, if we had said, we're gonna have the August Cannabis Management come and do that meeting here at City Hall, those folks would have showed up at City Hall. I mean,
I don't know that to be true.
it's right across the street from
I
where
know
the
where it
meeting
is, but we're talking about the audience.
Right, that's what I'm saying, though. I think that
No,
the
we're not
audience
saying the same thing.
would have come to this
Yeah, but-
building just as they did to the library, which is another good setting for a neighborhood meeting, by the way.
But what I'm saying about that is, I know some people that were at the meeting. I personally invited people. I had people invite people who have never, and I've invited some of those same people to City Hall who have never shown up. So for some people, not that there's anything wrong with City Hall, we all love it here, certainly. But there's some people that just feel a little bit more comfortable outside of what they consider very formal environments. And so, so that's where we're just trying to meet people where they are. Mr. Farrell?
I think this is a very circular conversation.
Yes.
And I think it's pretty clear that this is just about accessibility. And we should be thinking of different ways to be, where tradition shouldn't stifle innovation here. We should be thinking of ways to create more entry points for people to be involved. It sounds like a good idea to do that. So can we just do that and so we can do something, or we just go keep it to having a circular conversation? And I, again, support the issue that I brought forth as far as rent stabilization. I support that being that. So let's do special meeting in the community on rent stabilization. That's my position.
Okay, so. I could support that, but I guess we would have to kind of take a straw poll because it's gonna need at least 4 of us who say that we're willing to do that. So, I'll start with you, Mr. Palomini.
No, it should be a town hall. The idea of a special meeting, I think there's restrictions that we want to be able to hear people and to get to what we're trying to achieve. Just in my mind, it doesn't accomplish it. And secondly, when we have a center of government and people aren't coming here, that's a problem. Because we want people to come here and be able to address us, to be able to bring their concerns and be comfortable here. And we're out in the community all the time. I'm even going to say we. I know I am, and several other people. So this notion that we're not going to people except when there's an election is just false. But we need people to come here in order to be comfortable. It doesn't mean we don't have other arenas like a town hall in order to hear what people have to say. But when we're conducting official business, there's a reason we have City Hall. And we want people to be comfortable coming here. And if they're not comfortable coming here and having something intentionally outside just for the comfort level, that's sending the wrong message. We want people to be comfortable coming to our meetings. And by doing this, we're sending the wrong message.
Mr. Toro.
I'd be in favor of a town hall, not a special meeting. I think if we have to have a special meeting, it would be here in the council chambers, but a town hall for sure.
Mr. Mutubero.
So, Mr. Williams, you started out this evening discussing that you're in favor of a town hall. And Mr. McCarthy just stepped in to say, take official action, we need to do it. So I kind of like, based on your research and everything that you put together, you're more in favor of a town hall versus of a special a committee meeting. Is that what you were discussing earlier today?
Go ahead, Ms. Williams.
I was looking forward to hearing some input from the other council members. That is the first time Mr. Palomini has said that during this discussion. So hearing that, absolutely, I would be willing to go back to having a town hall meeting. My whole intentions with that compromise was trying to figure out a way to collaboratively work with each other. But having made that comment so late in the conversation, if I had the opportunity, I would have done what I wanted to do first, which was a special meeting. But hearing this now, I can have a town hall meeting, but my vote's not now.
Yeah, since based on your discussion earlier, I'm going to be at this point in time in favor of a town hall.
Ms. Patrick.
I'm in favor of town hall, whether we call it town hall or a neighborhood meeting. I have expressed, and I think we did express a couple of meetings. When we first had that first discussion, Mr. Williams, I think we all did say that this is the place that we, want to conduct official business. At least I think that, I think that Mr. Palomini did say that. I don't know. I know I said it, but I do think I'll go back to the event that Ms. Porterfield and Ms. DeToro and I had with some young women, young girls and young women from the school district here. I do think that I like the idea of opening our doors even in that way, like having Girl Scout troops or Boy Scout troops that come in and meet with folks and get to tour the place. So I think to the question of how do we think outside the box around those kinds of things, I think starting to have tours or whatever. I mean, the history that we talked about that day was informative even to me. So I think that there are ways that we can do that, but I do appreciate the fact that this is the seat of our government here, and I agree that we have to figure out ways to make it comfortable. But in this regard, I say town hall neighborhood meeting.
Ms. Farr.
So, again, I'm in the favor of doing something, and I think that, making things accessible to the people. I am not married to it being a special meeting. I will fully support it being a town hall. and, you know, not either or, but yes and, so yes, town hall, and we are being intentional about increasing access and hearing so some of our non-traditional voices that don't come into City Hall, because we do official business here at City Hall, but we do the business of the people at City Hall, so we need to be going to the people and finding ways to do that. So I'm all for a town hall, if that's what we want to do. And I think we should talk about rent stabilization. So that's what I brought that for today. And that's
Mr. Williams?
So without trying to beat the dead horse, I think looking at something as simple as our green market, which is an awesome resource for our community to showcase to the capital region. There are often times where I'll walk around asking people, do you live in the city? And more times than not, they don't. So I think that is a case in point that how if we expected people to have to traverse down here to get any governmental access, I think that's wrong. And it's not to say that this shouldn't be the focal point, because I agree with you, Mr. Palomini. What I'm saying is, if there are opportunities for us to take this vehicle into the community, why not try it? And we're not marrying ourselves to doing this on a quarterly basis, which is what I recommended first, but understanding that this is a process and having gone through several drafts of this conversation, this is where we're at, and I'm excited. So I look forward to capturing all of the notes that I compiled so that we make sure when we do engage the community in a town hall setting, which I'll be voting yes to, it is appropriate, and we will take the lessons learned and we will discuss whether this was a benefit or whether it wasn't. So I hope yes.
So it looks like it's settled. Town hall is the direction we need to go in, but I think we do need to capture it somehow, Mayor. So we will have to think more about how we actually get people in again to talk about this. And so having people come in to talk, as you made the point, this time it's not, the tour was us telling them and describing to them. This time it's them telling us. So.
I meant that I like the idea of trying to, that was a separate thing.
Okay.
That was me digressing into the way that we can start to make people feel comfortable about coming here is maybe talking to young people and having young people come here and sharing with them what this place is. I mean, I think we heard that day that some folks that came didn't even know that there was such a thing as a city hall or what a city hall was. So I think the more that we can do those kinds of things as well, I'm not saying in place of what we're talking about. I'm saying for kids.
I didn't quite get
it's a good way to get people to come down here. We can do, I'm sure the mayor will post coffee and donuts for adults maybe even that haven't been here, but I'm joking, but I'm just saying, I mean, I think there's ways to introduce people to City Hall as well.
So just to return the focus to this, so we're going to do a town hall meeting with you want the discussion to be rent stabilization. I think we do have some homework to do before that. Mr. Williams will send out the dates, and then we can all decide, can you just check to make sure none of them fall on the neighborhood association dates? And then he'll send out the dates, and then we'll say yes, no, which date works for us, and take it from there. And just as a reminder, we still need to do something so that it can be, because the mayor said, it needs, in order us to, if we're going to move forward and do anything, we have to have some way that we officially capture what we're doing here. So, and the town hall does not meet that particular need. So
we have to record it, right? Take minutes.
All right. So, Mr. Williams will send that out. We'll hear back, and hopefully sometime in September or early October, we will actually move forward on this. And in the meantime, if you can keep the council just updated in terms of, where we are with that. Mr. Farley, I need to hand it back to you because this was your topic of discussion, really.
No, I'm just glad that, we're talking about this really important topic. I'm really happy that we're making decisions, informed decisions and giving people access. Be part of the conversation, so thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you all for your input. And the next item on the agenda is an amendment of the collective bargaining agreement. Mr. Colden, does that need to be an executive session?
I'm requesting that it be an executive session.
Okay. And all remaining items for property sales also need to be in executive session. So at this time, I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?